living with a death sentence, the longest wait on death row. The man who couldn't die. If you think death is the worst punishment, you haven't heard this story. Smash that subscribe button, drop a comment below, and buckle up because what you're about to hear will haunt you long after this video ends. March 17, 2003. San Quentin State Prison, California. The guards made their routine morning rounds through death row's East Block when they noticed something unusual. Cell 82 was silent. Too silent. Inside, they found Marcus Webb sitting perfectly still on his bunk, staring at the concrete wall. He hadn't moved in hours. He wasn't sleeping. He wasn't reading. He was just waiting. Marcus Webb had been waiting for 23 years. Most people don't understand what death row really means. They picture the electric chair, the lethal injection chamber, the final walk. But that's not the punishment. The punishment is the time before. The endless, suffocating time. Webb's case had become a legal nightmare that even veteran attorneys couldn't untangle. Arrested in 1980 for the brutal murder of convenience store owner Robert Chin during an armed robbery in Oakland, Webb maintained his innocence from day one. The evidence against him seemed solid at first. A witness identification, a gun found 3 blocks from the scene, and Webb's fingerprints on the store counter. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before sentencing him to death. But then the appeals began. In 1985, the witness recanted, claiming police had pressured her into identifying Webb. The gun's ballistics report contained inconsistencies that defense attorneys called deliberately misleading. New forensic analysis suggested the fingerprints had been there from an earlier, legitimate visit to the store. Each discovery triggered another appeal, another hearing, another postponement of execution. By 1990, Marcus Webb had survived 3 execution dates. Each time, a stay came through hours before the scheduled injection. Each time, he prepared himself to die. Each time, he was dragged back to his cell to keep waiting. The psychological toll was devastating. Prison psychologist Dr. Sarah Mendoza evaluated Webb in 1998 and noted severe anxiety, depression, and what she termed anticipatory death syndrome. He couldn't sleep the week before scheduled executions. He gave away his belongings 3 times. He wrote final letters to family members who stopped reading them because it hurt too much. The cruelty isn't in the execution, Dr. Mendoza wrote in her report. It's in making someone die over and over in their mind year after year, never knowing when it will actually happen. By 2003, Webb had been on death row longer than he'd been a free adult. He was 19 when arrested. Now he was 42, with gray hair and the hollow eyes of someone who'd spent decades in a 6-by-8-foot cell, waiting for a death that never came. Other inmates came and went. Some were executed within 5 years. Others won appeals and left death row entirely. But Marcus Webb remained, trapped in a legal purgatory that seemed to have no end. The California Attorney General's office pushed for execution. The defense team fought for exoneration. And Marcus Webb sat in his cell, counting days that blurred into years. On that March morning in 2003, when guards found him staring at the wall, they asked if he was okay. Webb turned slowly, his voice barely a whisper. "They're coming for me today, aren't they?" The guards exchanged glances. No execution was scheduled. But when they checked the warden's office that afternoon, they discovered something that would turn the entire case inside out. A document had just arrived. A document that would prove Marcus Webb had been right to be afraid. Because sometimes, the thing you've been waiting for finally comes. And sometimes, it's even worse than you imagined. The document was a police report. But not just any police report. It was dated March 15, 2003, just 2 days before guards found Marcus Webb staring at his cell wall. And it contained a confession that would rip apart everything everyone thought they knew about the Robert Chin murder. Detective Linda Vargas of the Oakland Police Department had reopened the Chin case as part of a cold case unit initiative. What she discovered made her physically ill. In a storage box containing evidence from 1980, she found interview tapes that had never been entered into evidence. Tapes that defense attorneys had never heard. Tapes that the prosecution claimed didn't exist. On those tapes was the voice of a man named Devin Pierce, recorded just 3 days after Chen's murder. Pierce had walked into the Oakland police station voluntarily, visibly shaking, and confessed to the shooting. He described details only the killer could know: the broken security camera in the back, the specific drawer where Chen kept emergency cash, even the fact that Chen had begged for his life in Cantonese. But here's where it gets twisted. If you think you know where this is going, drop a comment below with your theory, because what happened next will blow your mind. And hit that like button if you're as shocked as I was when I first uncovered these details. The lead detective in 1980, now retired Sergeant Frank Morrison, had buried Pierce's confession. Because Pierce was the nephew of a prominent Oakland city councilman, Morrison made a calculation. He could protect a connected young man from a powerful family, or he could pursue justice for a convenience store owner that nobody seemed to care about. 2 weeks after Pierce's confession, Morrison arrested Marcus Webb instead. Detective Vargas spent 3 months verifying every detail. She tracked down Devin Pierce, now living in Sacramento under his mother's maiden name. She pulled his financial records and found suspicious cash deposits in 1980 that matched the amount stolen from Chen's store. She interviewed Pierce's ex-wife, who revealed that Pierce had nightmares about the store for years and once drunkenly admitted to killing someone. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus Webb was innocent. Devin Pierce was the real killer. And the system had knowingly imprisoned the wrong man for 23 years. Vargas rushed her findings to the California Attorney General's office, expecting immediate action. Instead, she hit a wall of bureaucratic resistance. Admitting this level of misconduct would open the state to massive lawsuits. It would destroy the reputation of the Oakland PD. It would raise questions about how many other cases Morrison had corrupted during his 30-year career. So they buried it. But Vargas wouldn't let it die. She leaked the documents to Webb's defense team on March 15. That's why Webb knew something was coming. His attorney had visited him that morning and told him everything. Now here's where the story takes a turn that'll make your blood run cold. Make sure you're subscribed, because the ending of this case is something you absolutely cannot miss. Trust me, if you think this is intense now, Chapter 3 will leave you speechless. Marcus Webb finally had proof of his innocence. After 23 years, he had the evidence that should have freed him from day one. His execution wasn't scheduled. He should have felt hope for the first time in decades. But Marcus Webb wasn't feeling hope. He was feeling something much darker. Because while Detective Vargas was fighting to exonerate him, Devin Pierce had learned that the case was being reopened. And Pierce had connections, money, and 23 years of freedom he wasn't willing to give up. He'd built a life as a successful real estate developer. He had a wife, 3 children, and a reputation in Sacramento's business community. Pierce's family had protected him once. They would protect him again. On March 16, the day before guards found Webb staring at the wall, Pierce made several phone calls. One was to a lawyer who specialized in reputation management. Another was to a private investigator with ties to organized crime. The third call was to someone inside San Quentin State Prison. Someone on the payroll. Webb knew the document had arrived at the warden's office. But he also knew something else. Something his attorney had whispered to him before leaving that morning: Marcus, watch your back. If Pierce knows you're about to be freed, you become the only witness who can identify him. The only person who can prove he let you rot here for 2 decades. That's why Webb was staring at the wall. He wasn't waiting for execution anymore. He was waiting for something worse. Because the cruelest irony of death row is that sometimes, just when you're about to escape it, that's when you're in the most danger. And Marcus Webb was right to be afraid. Because at 11:47 p.m. that night, the lights in East Block suddenly went dark. In the pitch black, Webb heard his cell door click open. It shouldn't have opened. Electronic locks don't fail randomly. Someone had overridden the system. Footsteps approached his cell. Heavy. Deliberate. Not the usual guard patrol. Marcus Webb, who had survived 23 years on death row, who had outlasted 3 execution dates, who had finally found proof of his innocence, pressed himself against the back wall of his cell. And for the first time since 1980, he prayed for morning to come. The footsteps stopped outside Marcus Webb's cell. In the darkness, he could hear breathing. Heavy, controlled breathing. Then a voice, low and unfamiliar. Marcus Webb, step to the back of your cell and face the wall. It wasn't a guard's voice. Guards identified themselves. Guards turned on flashlights. Guards followed protocol. This was something else entirely. Webb's mind raced through 23 years of survival instincts. He'd seen inmates killed over gambling debts, gang affiliations, and disrespect. But this was different. This was calculated. This was about silencing the one man who could expose Devin Pierce and destroy the entire corrupt system that had protected him. I said, face the wall. The voice was closer now, just inside the cell door. Webb made a split-second decision that would save his life. Instead of complying, he shouted at the top of his lungs. Help! Intruder in cell 382. Someone's in my cell. His voice echoed through East Block. Other inmates started yelling, banging on cell doors, creating chaos. The emergency lighting system kicked on, bathing the corridor in red. The figure in Webb's cell cursed and bolted. Webb caught a glimpse, correctional officer uniform, but no name tag. No radio. And something metallic in his hand that definitely wasn't standard issue. Within 90 seconds, legitimate guards flooded East Block. They found Webb alive, shaking but alive. They found his cell door electronically unlocked without authorization. And most importantly, they found something the intruder had dropped in his rush to escape. A syringe filled with potassium chloride. Enough to cause cardiac arrest that would look natural in a middle-aged death row inmate. Untraceable if administered correctly. The perfect murder. If you're watching this and your heart is pounding, hit that subscribe button right now because stories like this are exactly what we cover on this channel. Real cases that sound too insane to be true, but every word is documented. The attempted murder of Marcus Webb triggered a federal investigation that moved faster than any appeal ever had. The FBI descended on San Quentin within hours. They traced the security override to a correctional officer named Raymond Booker, who had received $15,000 in cash deposits over the previous week. Booker's phone records showed multiple calls to a Sacramento number registered to a shell company owned by Devin Pierce's family trust. It was over. Pierce had made the fatal mistake of trying to cover up one crime by committing another, and this time, there was no corrupt detective to bury the evidence. Federal prosecutors offered Booker immunity in exchange for testimony. He gave them everything. Pierce had hired him to kill Webb and make it look like natural causes or suicide. The plan was to eliminate Webb before the exoneration hearing could take place. On April 3, 2003, just 17 days after the attempted murder, Devin Pierce was arrested at his Sacramento home. His children watched as federal agents led their father away in handcuffs. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Pierce would now face the same death penalty he'd escaped 23 years earlier by framing an innocent man. And Marcus Webb? On June 12, 2003, he walked out of San Quentin State Prison a free man. He had spent 8,421 days on death row for a crime he didn't commit. That's 23 years, 1 month and 22 days. Nearly a quarter-century of his life, stolen. The state of California eventually paid Webb $12 million in compensation. It sounds like a lot until you do the math. That's about $1,400 per day of wrongful imprisonment. $1,400 for each day of psychological torture, each sleepless night before a scheduled execution, each moment of hope crushed by legal delays. Drop a comment below. Do you think 12 million is enough for 23 years of hell? And what should happen to the people who knowingly imprisoned an innocent man? But here's the part that still haunts me, and it's why you need to stay subscribed to this channel for the follow-up to this story. Devin Pierce's trial revealed something even more disturbing. Detective Frank Morrison, the officer who had buried Pierce's confession and framed Webb, had done it before. The federal investigation uncovered 4 other cases where Morrison had manipulated evidence, buried confessions, or coerced witnesses. For other cases where the wrong person may have been convicted. 2 of those people had already been executed. Marcus Webb was lucky. He survived long enough for the truth to emerge. But those 2 others didn't. They were put to death by the state for crimes Morrison knew they didn't commit. And Morrison? He died of a heart attack in 2001, 2 years before any of this came to light. He never faced justice. He never answered for what he'd done. Webb tried to rebuild his life after release. He bought a small house in Northern California, far from Oakland and its painful memories. He struggled with severe PTSD, anxiety, and what psychologists now call post-incarceration syndrome. Simple things terrified him: open spaces, crowds, making decisions about what to eat or wear. After 23 years of rigid prison routine, freedom felt like drowning. In interviews, Webb said something that still gives me chills. People think death row is about waiting to die. But it's worse than that. It's about dying slowly, piece by piece, while you're still alive. They took my youth, my sanity, my ability to trust anyone. Even now that I'm free, part of me is still in that cell, waiting for footsteps in the dark. Devin Pierce was convicted and sentenced to death in 2004. As of today, he's been on death row for over 20 years. He's filed multiple appeals. He's had execution dates scheduled and stayed. He's experiencing exactly what Marcus Webb endured, except with one crucial difference. Pierce is actually guilty. Some people call that poetic justice. Others call it the same broken system perpetuating the same cruelty, just with a different victim. And here's the final twist that'll make you question everything. In 2019, Webb did something nobody expected. He filed a clemency petition for Devin Pierce, asking the governor to commute Pierce's sentence to life without parole. Not because Pierce deserved mercy, but because Webb believed the death penalty itself was the real crime. "No one should experience what I went through," Webb wrote. "Not the innocent, and not even the guilty. The system that tortured me for 23 years is the same system about to execute Pierce. And that system is broken. If we keep feeding it, we're all complicit." Webb's petition was denied. Pierce remains on death row, waiting, just as Webb once waited. If this story disturbed you, if it made you think, if it made you question the system we trust with life and death decisions, then you need to subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell because next week, we're covering another case that'll prove the nightmare isn't over. There are currently over 2,400 people on death row in America. And after hearing Marcus Webb's story, you have to wonder, how many of them are innocent? How many are waiting for footsteps in the dark? Marcus Webb survived the longest wait. But the question that keeps me up at night is this: how many others didn't? Drop a like if this story shook you. Comment below with your thoughts on the death penalty and wrongful convictions. And subscribe, because the truth is darker and more complex than anyone wants to admit. And remember, Marcus Webb spent 8,421 days waiting to die for a crime he didn't commit. Devin Pierce has now spent over 7,300 days waiting for the same fate for a crime he did commit. Both men are victims of the same cruel system. The only difference is, one of them deserved it. Or did he? Make it match with buyer wants/needs and make it catchy buyer attention and intention note. Make use of tags that buyer are used to search for seller on Fiverr under this service, and also make use of different tags, make it detailed. See you in the next investigation.